We're reading the book Stop the Chaos by Alan A. Ty. And he has an MS in CCDCR. And this book's called Stop the Chaos, How to Get Control of Your Life by Beating Alcohol and Drugs. This is what it looks like. This book was given to me in 2017 when I was in group recovery at a place called Clean Start in Seattle, Washington. Formerly Community Psychiatric Clinic, taken over and merged with Sound Mental Health. I just bought a second copy of this book on eBay. I found it for under $6, free shipping, and I'm waiting for it to arrive. And we're on chapter 5. Building a stable foundation for recovery. Your life. Living situation, support system, daily environment, relationship with others. Once we've stopped using chemicals, we're faced with the real stumbling block. The block is accepting that we need to make many other significant changes in our lives. We go from a lifestyle that encourages chemical use to one that promotes sobriety. At this point in our recovery, we're particularly vulnerable to falling back into chemical use. With a stable lifestyle, we increase our chances of avoiding a relapse. Making lifestyle changes requires courage. We must be truthful and willing to make and act on a difficult decision. We need to confront our greatest fears. If we give into our fears, we find ourselves minimizing or denying our true circumstances. We can establish a firm foundation for recovery by identifying strengths and weaknesses in 4 basic lifestyle areas: living situation, recovery support system, job or daily activities, relationships. Without a supportive and stable living situation, we have little chance of maintaining abstinence. Establishing a living situation that helps our recovery involves examining the setting, the location, the potential for chemical use, and the people in the setting. Personal stories. Jan was attending an outpatient treatment program for her drug use. The counselor asked about her living situation. Jan said that both her roommates drank and drugged heavily. There was a party almost every night. Jan admitted that her social life revolved around the parties in her apartment. Jan realized that she had no support for her recovery. Where she was living, her chances of remaining sober in that environment were small. Denny drank at home alone. he knew that people who tried to return to their old drinking places didn't do well. Then he realized that his solitary existence in his apartment was his bar. He doubted that he could remain in that environment and stay sober. Julie lived with her boyfriend, and their relationship revolved around the use of chemicals. He supplied the drugs and alcohol and used that to control the relationship. He was against Julie's attending a treatment program. He did not want to deal with a woman who was learning to be independent and no longer controlled by chemicals. And Julie hoped that he would be supportive, but soon found that he was trying to sabotage her recovery. How will your present living situation affect your recovery? Take time to examine positives and negatives of the circumstances in your home. Ask yourself the following questions. How does my current living situation support my support my recovery? Do I live with someone who uses chemicals? Are there alcohol or other drugs in my home? Do I live alone? Did I use at home? Do the people I live with respect my decision to be in recovery? Is the neighborhood I live in helpful or harmful to my recovery? Use your answers to questions to list the positives and negatives about your present living situation. Ask family members, friends, or your recovery support team to help you. Remember that they may see benefits or dangers that you can't. They can also help you answer questions or discuss concerns. Recovery is difficult under the best of conditions. How my present living situation works with my recovery. How my present living situation works against my recovery. Review the list of how your current situation works against your recovery. Are there situations you will need to change? You may be tempted to say yes, that could be a problem, but I'll be able to handle it. Be aware that part of you will want to play down the severity of your addiction to avoid uncomfortable changes. Identify 2 areas of your living situation that you need to change. Now that you identified situations that work against your recovery, make an action plan to deal with these situations. Write answers to the following questions. What actions do you need to take? Be prepared with a step-by-step concrete plan. Stability equals improving our chances of staying sober. What will be the hardest part for you to do? Whom will you need to help you? Remember, you don't have to do everything yourself. When can you start your plan? Don't procrastinate. Discuss the plan with a counselor and other people in recovery. How many hours a week did you spend being preoccupied with drugs and alcohol, using or coming down, and being hungover? Be honest. Don't minimize. Write the number. How many hours a week do you plan on devoting to your recovery? Write the number down. Is there a substantial difference between the two numbers? If it's true that your life has been conditioned by your thinking and behavior, can you realistically make a change with the figure you've calculated? For most of us, the answer is no. Recovery from drugs and alcohol requires an intense, ongoing effort. If we could have achieved recovery by ourselves, we probably wouldn't be reading this book. A principle behind recovery is that together we can accomplish something that we could not do alone. This means that we must take the time to turn to others for advice and guidance. Personal story. Phil believed that because he knew he was an alcoholic and addict, he could maintain sobriety on his own. He resisted suggestions from professionals and friends to develop a sound support system. In a short time, he was back to chemical use. He forgot that if he could have accomplished sobriety by himself, he would have done so long ago. Phil was trying the same thing over and over, but expecting different results. Kelly had gone to 12-step meetings for a long time. She finally quit going when she couldn't maintain abstinence. She tried several other groups but had the same result. Kelly's problem was not in the different groups she tried, but rather in the fact that she resisted becoming involved with the people she encountered. The more recovery-related people, places, and things we surround ourselves with, the easier our paths become. We need to look closely at how we can establish an effective recovery support system. For many of us, this book may be our first and only contact with the concept of recovery. The book itself may be our only support at this point. Others of us will have a treatment program, counselor, an employee assistance person, or a therapist to guide us. We may have already been in recovery program, but somehow lost our stability along the way. For some of us, our first formal experience with recovery may be through a 12-step or other self-help program. If we could have achieved recovery by ourselves, we probably wouldn't be reading this book. A principle behind recovery is that together we can accomplish something that we could not do alone. This means that we must take the time to turn to others for advice and guidance. Assess your assets and liabilities for building a support system. Ask yourself the following questions. Do I already have a sponsor, home group, or friends in recovery? Do I have a supportive recovery group and people whom I have relied on? Have I ever had problems establishing a stable recovery support system? If yes, what got in the way? What would get in the way of building a solid recovery program now? Have I had experience with self-help groups such as Alcoholics Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous, Rational Recovery, or Women for Sobriety? If yes, how did this work for me? Did I take the group too seriously, or did I lack commitment? What personal characteristics could stop me from reaching out to others for help? Is there a part of me that still insists I should be able to do this by myself? Am I trying the same thing over and over again, but expecting different results? Use your answers to the questions to list the positives and negatives about your situation. Again, ask others to help you see benefits or dangers that may not be apparent to you. Write down assets for building my recovery system. Write down liabilities for building my recovery system. Google the definition of assets. Write that down and Google the definition for liabilities. And write that down and answer those questions. Identify 2 areas that you will need to change in building a stable recovery support system. Now that you've identified liabilities in constructing a stable recovery support system, make an action plan to deal with these liabilities. Write answers to the following questions. What actions do you need to take? Be prepared with a step-by-step concrete plan. What will be the hardest parts for you to do? Whom will you need to help you? Remember, you don't have to do everything by yourself. When can you start your plan? Don't procrastinate. Discuss this plan with a counselor and other people in recovery. Conditioned behaviors and thinking are difficult to change. We must set our course and be patient. We need to surround ourselves with people who understand and support our recovery. As we develop a stable recovery support system, we find that the emotional ups and downs of our lives are less frequent. By sharing with other recovering people, we construct a pressure relief valve. Stable job or daily activities. In early recovery, structure and stability are needed on a daily basis. Those of us new to recovery frequently lack daily disciplines. We have too much time on our hands. We risk filling it with using thoughts and behaviors. We need to remember that when triggered, our limbic systems can quickly provide those old thoughts and feelings. We need to feel good about our accomplishments on a daily basis. We build self-esteem by doing esteemable things. How would you handle the following situations? After finishing an inpatient addiction program, Saul returned to work in a construction field where drug and alcohol use was extensive, both on the job and after work. To be part of the team, Saul felt he needed to be present during these using activities. Saul found that when he included himself in these activities, he had severe using urges and felt out of place. He knew he was putting himself in a dangerous situation. What would you do if you had Saul's problem? Before going through treatment, Gwen started drinking when her children left for school. She isolated herself from others so that she could devote her day to her drinking. Now that she's trying to stay sober, she finds herself alone at home, bored, and wishing that she could drink just to relieve her boredom. It has become clear to Gwen that she needs structured daily activities to help her resist using urges. What are some options for Gwen? What is your job or daily life situation like? Ask yourself the following questions. What do I have daily structured activities? Do I work with people who use? Does my daily schedule or working environment support recovery? Am I a high-stress environment? Do family, employer, or personal expectations increase my stress level? Use your answers to the questions to list the assets and liabilities of your daily schedule. Assets for recovery in my job or daily activities. Situations dangerous to my sobriety in my job or daily activities. Identify 2 areas that you need to change in your daily lifestyle. Now that you've identified situations that are dangerous to your sobriety in your job or daily activities, make an action plan to deal with these situations. Write answers to the following questions. What actions do you need to take? Be prepared with a step-by-step concrete plan. What will the hardest part for you to do? Whom will you need to help you? Remember, you don't have to do everything yourself. What can you start your plan? When can you start your plan? Don't procrastinate. Discuss this plan with a counselor and other people in recovery. It's easy to brush aside dangers in the workplace or in daily routines. We can tell ourselves that we'll be strong enough to handle them, but we need to avoid taking chances and plan for possible dangers. Staying Busy in structured activities keeps our minds from dwelling on our problems. Now is not the time to try to make up for lost time with our families or in our jobs. We're seeking moderation in our lives. Many of us have damaged our relationships with friends and family. They may have pulled away from us and our addiction became worse. Some of the relationships we've held on to may not be helpful or stable. They can create excess stress through irrational expectations. Please Google the word irrational and write that down. They can create an excess stress through irrational expectations or a long history of resentments. Many of us have damaged our relationships with friends and family. They may have pulled away from us as our addiction became worse. Some of the relationships we've held on to may not be helpful or stable. They can create excess stress through irrational expectations or a long history of resentments. Please look up resentments and write the definition down. We need the stability of healthy relationships to help us through early recovery. We must identify relationships that may be harmful to some of us. Some of these harmful relationships are with people from whom we desperately seek approval. Write down the word seek and look up the definition and write that down. Personal story. Max has been through chemical dependency treatment 7 times. His family members have endured much emotional suffering. They have become fearful for his life and frustrated by his inability to attain sobriety. They've informed him they could no longer keep in contact with him while he is using. Max now has 3 months of sobriety and would like to reunite with his family. He has become angry that they do not yet trust him. He resents what he sees as their rejection of him. Most of Sherry's friends and family say they support her recovery. She feels comfortable and they would not do anything to harm her. At the first family gathering after treatment, her father offered her a beer, saying, "You can have one, just don't get drunk." Her best friend handed her a joint, thinking she had gone to treatment for alcohol, not drugs. Max has forgotten the development of trust takes time. Because of his past history, his family has every right not to trust him. Max's continued efforts to repair this relationship have only driven his family and him further apart and have caused enough resentment to jeopardize his recovery. It was a mistake for Sherry to think that others understand what addiction is all about. We need to be careful of our expectations of others as well as their expectations for us. People we think support our recovery may place us in an uncomfortable situation. Tim's parents said they supported his recovery, although his whole family drinks heavily. On Thanksgiving, Tim decided to play it safe and celebrate with his recovering friends. He chose not to be around the heavy drinking and intoxication of his relatives. When he told his mother of his decision, she became furious and said, "So you think that your AA friends are more important than family?" Tim felt guilty after the conversation and somehow felt he had let his family down. Take time to think about the relationships in your life and how they will affect your recovery. Ask yourself the following questions. What are my relationships with non-recovering people like? Do I have many close friends? Am I more of a loner? Do friends and family really want to see me sober, or are they more concerned about my not being a problem to them? Are my relationships built around using situations? Do I feel others place too many expectations on me? Do I have to live up to an image that is not really who I want to be? List people who will be assets to your recovery. List the people who may be liabilities to your recovery. Identify 2 people or situations that may be dangerous to your recovery. Now that you've identified people or situations that could be dangerous to your sobriety, make an action plan to deal with these people or situations. Write answers to the following questions. What actions do you need to take? Be prepared with a step-by-step concrete plan. What will be the hardest part to do for you? Whom will you need help from? Remember, you don't have to do everything yourself. When can you start your plan? Don't procrastinate. Discuss this plan with a counselor and other people in recovery. We rarely have complete stability in our lives. When entering early recovery, what's important is to identify problem areas and to find ways to manage these situations. Sometimes that involves simple changes. In other cases, it involves making large lifestyle changes. The more stable our lives are, the more apt we are to maintain our sobriety. The more recovering people we can surround ourselves with, the easier the emotional transition will be. Remember, recovery must be based on a solid foundation, stable living situation, stable recovery support system, stable job or daily activities, stable relationships. The fewer stabilizing factors we have in our lives, the more work we will need to do. We need to make our lifestyle fit our recovery, not our recovery fit our lifestyle. We're going to take a break.